1. Let me start off by giving some information about myself. I'm female, 5'3", have long black hair, and was 17 years old at the time. This all happened during the summer on a weekend. My 3 friends and I have been planning on a shopping trip at the mall for a long time before this encounter. Then we went to Spencer's Gifts, a novelty gift store, to look at all the gag gifts. We were near the back of the store where they kept the raunchy toys, when a guy who had been looking at them came near my friends and I. One of my friends whispered in my ear that he looked sketchy. I just blew it off and said, "Whatever," and continued to pass by him. Once I did, I felt his body glide against mine, even though there was enough space to not touch me. I felt kind of uncomfortable, but did not think much of it. I then moved over to my friends who were in the t-shirt area. I took a look around the store and saw the creepy man that my friend warned me about. What I saw him doing still sends shivers down my spine. He was holding his phone to his side, taking pictures of us. I could tell that he was trying to inconspicuously take photos of us because no one that I know would hold their phones in such an odd manner. We were about 3 feet away from his left. His position was as follows: front-facing, my friends and I, back to the merchandise, left arm holding phone near his chest. I remember this quite vividly because once my fear takes over, everything slows down and details pop out. He was a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap, khaki cargo shorts, and an oversized red shirt. I was having a mini panic attack and firmly told my friends that we had to leave the store. They asked why, and I shook my head. I told them that we had to leave now. They followed me out of the store and asked me what was wrong. I told them that the creepy guy was taking pictures of us, and they told me that they sensed a bad vibe in that store. We quickly walked to Nordstrom Rack and entered the bathroom to talk about the situation. We were all officially creeped the fuck out. After talking about our situation and calming down a bit, we thought that it was all over and we could go about our trip relatively normally. We went to Target, which was the store farthest from Spencer's, to go buy face masks and makeup wipes for a sleepover we were going to have. I ventured off with one of my friends to get the wipes before my 2 other friends ran up to us and said, "The creep is here!" I thought that they were joking and laughed it off. When they told me that they weren't kidding, I saw the fear in their eyes. I turned around and saw the same guy with an empty shopping cart, stalling at the women's shoe aisle with his phone again. I had had enough of the creep, and speed walked to a Target employee. He was stocking items. I explained, "Excuse me, I'm sorry to bother you, but there is a creepy guy following us around the mall and taking pictures of us. May we talk to security or a manager?" The employee said, kind of confused, "Oh, just stay with me and I'll call my manager." We waited for about 5 minutes until a female manager came up to us asking what happened and how the pervert looked. We told her all the details and she left to have a word with him. He eventually left, and we went to look for chips and candy. Even though the man had left, we were still very on edge and paranoid because we did not feel safe anymore. We couldn't call the cops because nothing could be done. A, it was completely legal for him to take pictures of us, and B, the mall was also private property. I felt hopeless and scared, and I only had a sense of relief when I had a firm grip on my pepper spray. We bought our things, and my friend called her father to come pick us up. We waited at the Starbucks in Target for 20 minutes, and then got picked up. We all felt a huge weight off of our shoulders, but we're still stressed about the whole situation. Society is flawed and filled with many sick, disgusting people. On that fateful day, I learned that even though hearing and reading scary stories made my skin crawl, nothing is more bone-chilling than actually experiencing it. I still do not go to malls that often because of that horrible man. Stay safe out there, guys. And remember to bring pepper spray, and be alert wherever you go. So, creepy picture-taking pervert stalker, let's not meet ever again, because I will pepper spray the bloody hell out of you. 2. Moving to Michigan from North Carolina was a big change for all of us. The climate was a huge difference for us since we weren't as used to the cold, along with having to start a new school and meeting new people. However, there were other major differences as well. These ones weren't as innocent. When we came to Michigan, our parents bought a one-story house that had originally come with 2 bedrooms. But with having 3 girls, our parents remodeled and added another room. The neighborhood was a friendly one with lots of children our age to play around with. It seemed like we had hit the jackpot with this home. At the time, I was the youngest. When we moved, I was only 4 or 5. For the first 2 years of living there, things were great. Even with the 3rd bedroom, my sisters and I still liked to sleep in the same bedroom, as we were all very close. Most nights we would roughhouse around and watch TV until we were yelled at by our parents to go to bed. The night the incident happened, we were doing exactly that. It was late one night, and my sisters were on the bed roughhousing. That particular night we were watching Ghost Hunters. I had gotten up to use the bathroom. I'm not sure what caused me to look out the window, but I felt like something was watching me. As I turned my head to look out, fear froze me to my spot. It was like being in a nightmare and not being able to do anything as a face stared back at me. It was enough to send ice-cold shivers down my body and a knot to build up in my throat. I wasn't sure what to do. Did I call for my sisters and them call me crazy? What if the person behind the window tried breaking through? I was completely terrified as I looked into this man's face as he stared right back at me. He had no expression on his face, only blank eyes that would keep me awake for nights to come. With a sudden burst of courage, I managed to get out a meek whisper, "Guys, there's someone in the window." Of course, my first fear was correct, and my older sisters didn't believe me. They thought I was playing a joke on them as I kept an eye on the face, making sure it wouldn't disappear, but at the same time wishing it would. Finally, after convincing them to just look, they both got up and saw him. My eldest sister ran for our father as my sister and I both stood there in fright, unsure what to do. My dad had woken up, and along with our trusty black lab and wolf mix Susie, he managed to chase the man away. Our dad called the cops, but they told us that since he had not tried to break in or hurt us, they couldn't do anything about it. We started locking our doors after that. After this incident, we began to question the neighbors, and they all responded the same. The family with the fence around their property had an adult son who was mentally disabled who would go around the neighborhood and look into girls' windows. It had even gotten so bad with one of the neighbor girls that her father had made a bat with nails sticking out of it as a threat for what could happen if the man had tried to come back to his home. My parents took this serious and proceeded to put inside locks and dark curtains on our windows so he couldn't see through. It seemed like the man had gotten the hint, and we didn't have any more encounters. That is until one night my oldest sister, who was a young teenager at the time, had just gotten out of the shower and was about to get dressed when she heard a noise at her window. She decided to stay in her towel and take a glance out the window to see what the noise was, when she saw the man's face looking back at her. She screamed for my parents and immediately left her room. My dad was immediately up with a baseball bat and going after the man with Susie on his heels. My dad has let Susie go ahead of him with one marching order: get him. Being the loyal dog she was, Susie took off after the man and bit his ankle, taking him down. While this was happening, my mom was on the phone with the police who were on the way. With help from Susie, our dad has captured the man and held him there until the cops showed. They arrested him, but because of his disability, he was let go the following day. My parents were furious. They couldn't understand how the police could let someone off who had been caught multiple times trespassing into people's yards and looking into younger girls' windows. They, along with the other neighbors, set up a neighborhood watch. They made sure that us kids were watched 24/7 and that no harm would come to us. Something that should be known about my father is that he is an ex-Marine who developed PTSD, one of the side effects being insomnia. My dad had taken advantage of this during these incidents, as he would keep watch on the house and constantly would check the yard for the man. This helped to make us kids feel safer because we knew with our dad watching over us, we'd be safe. It had been barely over a week since the man had looked into my sister's room, when he came again. This time it was only my middle sister and I in our room. It was still early evening, and my parents and their friends were hanging out in the living room. We had an early bedtime because it was a school night, so we were both in bed about to fall asleep when we began to hear noises like someone trying to get in. Fear immediately gripped both my sister and I, as we both knew what was most likely happening. Her being older and more brave, she jumped out of bed and ran to tell the adults what was happening. I, however, was once again frozen in fear, and I could hear the man trying to force open our locked window. I could do nothing more than hide under my covers and hope that he couldn't get in. It wasn't long before the adults were in the room looking out the window. My mom came to comfort me, while my dad checked things out. Since it was winter out, my dad could see the man's footprints below our window, along with handprints on our window. His temper immediately flared as he told my mom to call the cops again. He decided to take matters into his own hands and walked over to the man's home. While there, he told the man's parents what their son had been doing, and that the cops were already on their way. He made sure that the man was arrested and pressed charges. To this day, my sisters and I are still scarred by what happened. We refuse to have any of the windows left uncovered and locked, and always make sure that the doors are locked. I'm not quite sure whatever happened to him after he was arrested, but there was never again a face in our window after that. So to the man in the window, let's not meet again. 3. Back in 2013, I was living with my ex at the time, who lived near a nice country village, and as I was in between jobs at the time, I picked up a job at a local garden center. It was casual retail work, fairly decent pay, and easygoing enough that I could take coffee breaks frequently, and wear basically whatever I liked as long as I wore my work polo shirt. It was walking distance from my ex's house, and full of people of all ages who were the most lovely people I ever met. Most of the regular customers who came to the garden center were usually sweet old people who would visit the cafe because we had free teas and discounted lunches for OAPs if they had a store card. So you often got to know all of them, and some of them we gave nicknames. Most of them sweet, like Pink Hair Lady, a badass 80-year-old grandma who wore a tasseled leather jacket and bright pink hair. Then there was Campervan Couple, who used to drive a really cool campervan with bright orange flowers painted on it. You get the idea. With Creepy Artist Man, though, he gave most of the young girls weird vibes. He wore a straw hat, was in his late 40s, had round gold-rimmed glasses, and would wear strange graphic shirts with naked women on them. Or Professional Pussy Patrol sort of slogans on the back. He always wore ripped jeans where his knees were always hanging out of them, which were always dirty with paint or mud or something. He had this weird half-smile that would never leave his face, and a kind of leer that made people feel uncomfortable. He would take off his glasses and clean them constantly, which kind of made you feel like he was trying to get a better look at the girls who worked there, especially the younger ones. 16-plus school leavers, usually. Anyway, it was a roasting hot summer's day, and I had gratefully accepted the job of watering the hanging baskets outside, where I could avoid the humid, sweaty heat of the greenhouses. I was wearing black shorts and my red polo, and my tool belt to prune the dead plants as I went. With the hose in my hand and sunnies on my face, I was busy, but enjoying the solitary job at the quietest part of the garden center. "Well, hello there." Out of practically nowhere, he slipped out behind some wooden trellises and looked me up and down, smiling with his weird, too small teeth. His eyes lingered on me for what felt like an uncomfortable few seconds, and I turned off my hose and asked him if he needed anything. He shook his head and kind of shrugged, still smirking at my legs. "Okay, sir, have a nice day. Let me know if you need anything." I turned to continue. "I've never seen you here before. You're a new one." "Huh? Me? Well, I've been here for 8 months now." "I must have missed the memo that a beauty like you started. You have a nice tan. You look young." Thanks, I'm 23. Anyways, I have to get back to work."
"Nice to meet you, Casey Cat Lady."
I suddenly remember my name badge and get slightly irritated how he knew my full name. I make a beeline for the smoking area where the tool shed was, with an excuse to grab some smaller gardening gloves. And by the time I returned to the floor, he had left. As the weeks went by, he would come into the store regularly, usually mid-afternoon, coincidentally, or so I thought, around the time my shift started. Most of the time I was the only cashier, so I would have to serve him. He would buy the most smallest, pointless things like floristry wire or a tiny bag of birdseed. It seemed like he would purposely make a purchase with the intention of interacting with me. He would make comments about my appearance, statements mostly like, "You have your hair different today. Yesterday you had it down. You have new glasses," or, "That's a different lip color to yesterday." He would always announce my name loudly and deliberately during every interaction. I felt uncomfortable, but I was 23 and just politely shrugged it off. Around Christmas time, I was decorating the artificial trees, and he cornered me in the forest of them at the back of the store. He jumped out from behind one and made a jump, to which I was kind of pissed about him doing because I dropped a glass ornament and it smashed. He bent down also and tried to help, grabbing my wrist and telling me not to touch the glass. His grip was scarily tight and forceful, and his hands were clammy and gross. I slipped my hand out of his grip and asked if I could help him with anything. That's when it got weird. He pulled out a leaflet from his back pocket and told me he was an artist and had a Christmas art show happening in a local church hall, and he wanted me to go with him. He told me that he was a painter, and he thought I would like his work. I had never indicated I was interested in art, to him or anyone else for that matter, which is why I thought it was strange. I asked him if he wanted me to pin the leaflet to the local event board, and he reached out and touched my arm and said no, the invitation is specifically for you. He pointed his finger and jabbed it into my breast as he said, "You." So I'm standing there in a dark corner, obscured from view by artificial Christmas trees, just kind of cornered by this guy who was touching me. I cringed away and said, "I was busy with my boyfriend that day, sorry," and kind of scampered off. I remember feeling really strange after that, the fact that he grabbed my wrist and jabbed his finger into my chest that way. I told a few of my colleagues about it, and they all told me they would warn me the next time he was in the store, so I could maybe hang out at the storeroom until he was gone. Well, that memo must have missed a few of the temp Christmas staff, because one day I got told by one, "Your friend is asking for you at the tills." It wasn't unusual for my friends to stop by, as it was fairly popular for gifts, etc. So thinking it was maybe my ex's mum or something, I head to the till and there he is, holding a piece of paper. I cringe, but he had seen me now, so I walk over and ask what he needed from me. He passed the paper over and asked me to open it. Folded up was a drawing of me, with exaggerated breasts and cartoon-like eyes, watering the hanging baskets in a sexual kind of position. I kind of stood there and said, "Thank you," but I couldn't keep it, as though I thought it was inappropriate to take gifts from customers. I handed it back to him, and he kind of looked at me with this angry stare. He turned around and walked out without another word. By this point I had had enough. I knocked on my manager's door and told him about the whole scenario that just happened, and all the previous interactions I had with him over the past year. He watched the CCTV and agreed that it was so strange the way he gave me this gross picture, and told me that he would talk to him if he came back. He praised me for my reaction to his advances, and said I was doing the right thing and that he would try to see him off next time. The next day was a Sunday, and I was not due into work. My boss calls me and tells me he just received a call from HQ, stating that an anonymous caller had called in to report a staff member inappropriately coming on to a customer. The staff member they had described and named was me. The caller had said that I had been inappropriate towards him at work, offered to have sex with him, had led him on and obviously promiscuous, and that I had been pursuing him for over a year. The jerk even described a fictitious relationship we had had, and ranted loudly about how I had been cheating on my boyfriend, before hanging up. HQ luckily didn't believe a word, as my manager had already mentioned the guy to one of the higher-ups. But they thought it was wise to let me know about this crazy guy and suggested I report it to the police. The next day I did just that. The officer I spoke to said he matched the description of a man who was a local pest, somebody who often harasses young girls in the local area. He was also known to stalk girls in his car, and had attempted to abduct a young girl 4 years ago. The police officers assured me they would file a report and talk to him officially, and that he was not allowed in the garden center or anywhere near me again, and if he did, I was to call the police, and he would be arrested. Unfortunately, though, it never stopped him sending a ranting letter to my workplace, addressed to me saying he would kill himself if I didn't take him back, and receive his gift he drew of me. Fortunately, the police saw this as unsolicited contact, and he was thankfully arrested. So, creepy artist guy, let's not meet ever again. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 335. Sorry there was no stream at the weekend there. I wasn't really in the mood, to be honest with you. I spent most of my Saturday playing through Arkham Origins. I've decided just to delete all my save files on the Arkham games, start from scratch and play through and get 100%. And since technically speaking, contradictions aside, Origins is first in the chronology, even though it was not the first game, I'm starting with Origins. And some things are a bit easier than I remembered them being, probably because I've played through all the other games and gotten better at doing certain things. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.